We have almost who is who from both government and the private sector. So I will read out the names of the speakers and invite them on the dais. So let me start with Mr. A.L. Jarhad. He is the Commissioner and Director and the Municipal Administrator, Government of Maharashtra. Kindly come on the stage, sir. Welcome. Give me a big hand, please. Mr. A.L. Jarhad, Commissioner and Director and Municipal Administrator. The next eminent speaker is Mr. Sudham Gawali, who is the Deputy Commissioner, Department of Sales Tax, Government of Maharashtra. Welcome, sir. Sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Vasant Prabhu, who is the Deputy Municipal Commissioner, MCGM. Welcome on the dais, sir. Welcome, sir. Give me a big hand, please. Our next speaker is Shri N. Sudhanshu, who is the CEO, Mumbai Board of MADA. Welcome, Sudhanshu ji, on the stage. Give me a big hand, please. We have Shri Piyush Agarwal, who is the Executive Director, MTNL Mumbai. Welcome on the dais, Mr. Agarwal. So we had a DOT in the morning and we have MTNL in the evening. So not a bad thing to have at all. Thank you. And we have Shri O.P. Gupta, who is the General Manager of BEST. Welcome on the dais, sir, and he will be chairing and moderating the session. Great to have you here with us, sir. And from private sector, we have Shri Raj Jadhav, who is the VP from D-Link India. Welcome on the dais, sir. We have NSN Murthy, who is a sales leader, government industry, IBM India, South Asia. Welcome, NSN, on the dais. We have with us Manish Khanna, who is a national head Motorola. Welcome, Mr. Manish. And it seems that we already have exhausted on the chairs on the dais. And Shankar, you need to help us with the chair right now. So this is as big as it can get, right? And as powerful as it can get. So we also have with us Shri Naveen Sona, who is a collector and district magistrate of Wardha. Welcome on the dais, Mr. Naveen. Give me a big hand, please. So I think Mr. O.P. Gupta has a very, very challenging job on the hand to manage a panel like this, as eminent as this, as knowledgeable and this, with the time constraint we have. But I think like we have around 1.5 hours with us, and which is followed by a sumptuous dinner. So don't be scared. You can listen with all the pleasure, and we will have a good dinner for all of you. So with this, I will hand over the session to Mr. Gupta.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome my fellow panelists. What I've been given to understand is that this session is on smart cities. Smart city means basically now, since we are at a place where we cannot call any of our cities really smart city, so we should be thinking of creating smart cities. So what I'll request that all panelists who have been requested to talk, they have certainly chosen one subject each, I'm sure, and up to the maximum time limit of around 10 minutes, we should try and give our ideas as to what is our idea of a smart city, whether it can be in a particular sector, say transport or administration or whatever service deliveries. So therefore, what should be our idea of it, and what is the way forward where we can, how can we reach there, and how can we create our cities as smart cities. And therefore, up to the maximum limit of 10 minutes, if my fellow panelists agree, that we go, we make our presentation or we talk about it, and then we request the House to basically elaborate on specific ideas if somebody wants to know about something, certain things, or certain other suggestions or questions which comes. So since we are running late, actually I was given to understand this session was supposed to start at 5 o'clock. So we are already starting at around 6:15. So if we really cooperate, we can finish this by 7:30, which should be a reasonably decent time. So if there's a specific order as has been mentioned, so if we want to go by the order, I think Mr. Gerard is the first speaker. So I'll invite Mr. Gerard to talk about his ideas. Thank you.
Good evening. As you know, Maharashtra is moving urbanization very fast, and up 46-47% population is urban centric now. So they need the citizen services. As you know, Kalyan Dombivli Corporation, they started this e-governance model in 2002. And they got so many awards. So government of Maharashtra thought that this model will be replicated to 256 urban local bodies in Maharashtra. And it is decided in 2005, and the actual implementation started in 2009. There are 10-12 modules in this e-governance models. And out of that, most of the ULBs are now covered. So the I will the presentation is my big presentation, but I will sum up in 10 minutes. This is the project background. 2002 implementation in KDMC, then 2002 again government appointed committee and pilot projects and so and so. The key stakeholders are Urban Development Department, Director Municipal Administration, Commissioner KDMC, Urban Local Bodies, and Yashoda and ABM Computers and all this. Here is the main problem is the training to ULBs. Basically the ULBs, the people where the government servants are working, they are not much IT savvy. So the first component is very difficult for training them. So Yashoda did the training. And the data, digitization data, that is done by through IT and the hardware supplied by government of Maharashtra. Doing this, I think there are 56 total services we are doing now. And the time consuming for this, earlier all this is manual work. Now it is electronically. And I think the time, the revenue is also going on much higher scales. These are 231 ULBs right now. There are municipal corporations, councils, A, B, and C categories. The project period is over, but government of Maharashtra has given extension for 1 more year. These are the 56 services we are giving. I will give the details. These are the different modules now. 5 to 10 modules, they are alive in 50 ULBs, 1 to 4 in 135. And still there are 42 ULBs. They don't, they have not yet started their this e-governance. That is the challenge for us now. I will give the details. These are the outcomes up till now. The number of ULBs 170. The transaction happened 21 lakhs. Within 1 year, we have completed 21 transactions. And the revenue we have generated, that means collection of property tax, water billings, 959 crores. These are the some modules known. Birth and death certificates 58,000, and then complaints logged 1,000. Property bills generated 96,000. Water bills generated 68,000. Total number of transactions 2,24,000. This is the for 1 month. If you go with module wise, the birth and death, this is the most implementable, and it is implemented in 79%. And the least is the town planning, that is a building proposal departments. There are certain issues. Most challenge in this implementation is the staffs which the ULB is having. They are not IT savvy and they are not much educated to cope with these systems. So we are thinking to hire private consultants or private persons to implement, to support this training of our ULBs. And this year, at this rate, like 2 lakhs per month transaction, we are thinking to go 10 lakh, 15 lakhs per month. So at least within a year, we can cover 2 to 3 crores transactions. And later on, these double entry account systems will come. That will not only give the transparency, accountability, but we will have more revenue. Suppose somebody has not paid, we will show their name on the website, so they can pay their property tax or water tax or these market fees. So we will generate much revenue, as well as we will save the time, and as well as the people who are asking their services, we will deliver them very fast, quick, transparent and efficient manner. If you have any questions regarding this, I will reply. No, okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, officers on my desk and the audience. I will represent the case of automation in sales tax department. Basically, concept of a smart city is a new one. How would we would assess the ranking, or how would we would identify the smart cities? There are parameters, say a smart economy, a smart mobility, a smart environment, a smart people, smart living, and smart governance. I will briefly demonstrate how our tax department is contributing to the various contributing for making the cities more smarter or creating the city smarter. Basically, a smart governance. Our department is at a high level of e-governance in the country. The governance, at governance level, we are best. Coming to the smart economy, we have created a good environment for the industry, so that most of the industries are attracted towards the state of Maharashtra, particularly Mumbai, Nasik, Pune. That in that sense, we have contributed to some extent. We have created a regional competitiveness and provided an edge for the investor in the state of Maharashtra. For other factors, definitely our department contributes to 60 to 65% of the state's revenue. Definitely for any development, including this thing, transport, logistics, then human development, social development, that is education, health, other infrastructures, funds are required, and our department contributes for the funding in a major sense. So why e-governance was required in particularly in the sales tax department? Ours is a big department contributing to around, we have received 65,000 crore revenue in the 12-13. Ours is the biggest department in the country in case of the commercial tax side. Before e-governance, we had a problems. Basically, there are two stakeholders: internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders. For internal stakeholders, we had a problem of managing the physical records, like and identifying the non-filers of the return, non-payers of the taxes, tracking the records. We had problems. And for the taxpayers, there were hurdles, particularly in the tax compliance, particularly filing procedures, payment procedures, and all that. And they were required to visit frequently to the sales tax office. Because of the e-governance, we have helped them, and we have helped them to comply electronically, so that their hurdles are now almost over. Technically, we have two applications. For internal stakeholder, application called Mahavikas application. It's a separate application. Application is designed by Mastech. Now it's an old application. Original application development started in 2001. Because of the change in tax policy of VAT in year 2005, as well as since our tax laws are very dynamic, business processes are getting changed frequently. So there had many changes in the applications. So we have certain issues with the Mahavikas application. We will I will discuss subsequently. Then another application called Mahavat application. It's a website developed by ECIL. It provides e-services for the taxpayers. This is a snapshot of our website. On the website, dealer can, on the left side, different e-services are there, starting from registrations, e-filing, payments, filing of e-audit reports, help desk, everything is there. Dealer can view the acts, rules, notifications, download the things. Dealer can make grievances. And internal users can also access the sites. Separate employee corner platform is provided for making suggestions, grievances, and etc. Different e-services. We have provided 100% e-registration. All dealers are required to apply through online only. They have to apply online, and only the thing that dealer has to attend before the sales tax officer for attestation and identification of his authenticity. He has to attend before the officer, and photo signature is the only condition. Except that, entire registration process is online. The current service level that online application is there. Earlier, we used to visit the place of business of the dealer before grant of registration. But during this new process, we did business process re-engineering, and we had shifted this visit after the registration, because we grant in, and subsequently after 3 to 6 months, we visit the dealer, so that the delivery of the registration certificate has speeded up. Similarly, we have provided e-filing and e-payment facility to all the dealers. Our dealer base is the biggest in the country, that is 7 lakh plus VAT dealers, as well as 10 to 12 lakh profession tax dealers. All are filing returns electronically and paying also electronically. Dealers' efforts are reduced, because earlier dealers were required to go to bank, file the returns, issue the checks and all that. Now on the online, they can make the payment from their offices only. Similarly, for refund applications also, dealer can make a refund applications online and get the refunds early. For the CST declarations also, they can make the request online. Online processing is done. And if there are certain issues, then only defect memo through mail is communicated to dealer, or otherwise dealer is not required to attend the office. We issue the forms and courier to the dealers on his place of business address. Audit report. This is really a game changer. This is really a game changer in the history of sales tax. We introduced this audit report in 2009, and because of this, revenue gain in 2010-11 was 28.56%. This is an exhaustive audit report on the basis of returns filed by the dealer and transactions disclosed. This is third-party audit report. Chartered accountant audits this thing and give his comments on about the additional tax liability and all that. This is a detailed report, but it has helped us a lot in augmenting the compliance. This is the volume of e-transactions. We have provided around 88 lakh total electronic transactions during the 12-13 across different modules. Our average monthly transactions are 7.5 lakh. Other services we provide to dealers, that is facility for the dealers to provide, to post grievance suggestions and give information about tax evasion on our website. Bulk mail solution to send, to mail to the dealers. We also send SMS to the dealers. We have an economic intelligence unit set up at our headquarters, Mazgaon. Different functional setup units are there on the basis of our functions. Okay, sir. Okay. This is on. We have external database as well as internal database. External database we have link. We have link with the Central Excise Customs CBDT database. We link that. Periodically we download the MIS and use that data and see the internal compliance whether it is correct or not. This is a data exchange project. So benefit of automations, quality of administration has improved a lot. Revenue, reducing the revenue leakage, around 1,200 crore revenue leakage in case of Hawala operators last year we noticed. This is because of this EIU unit. Then quality of services to taxpayers has improved a lot. Reduction, departments cost has reduced, visits to dealers' places and all that. Compliance cost of the dealers is also dramatically reduced because of the e-filing. Challenges are there. We have, at present, we have 2 vendors, one for application developer and one for facility manager. We have issues of the coordination, requirement of additional infrastructure, because typically in government organization we make a contract, it's for 5 years. During the implementation phase there are many changes, increase in the enhancements, increase in number of users and all that. Performance issues of application because of changes in technology. Need of capacity building has been a challenge across all public organizations. We have, of course, definitely a new initiatives because we have ours is an old application. We are thinking to rewrite it. Then other things, online validation of PAN with CBDT database, providing dealers all the information on website. Then facility of ECS, electronic refund through electronic clearance system, paperless office. We are in the process of implementing this NIC module of the e-office, use of DMS and all that. Success, definitely success. I think it is an important factor to exchange between us, because I learned that, I have read somewhere that in one survey it is noticed that around 50% project in the government domain has failed. Only 30% has partly successful and only 20% are successful. So that's why it's very important for us, because we followed a participatory approach, involvement of all stakeholders, particularly taxpayers, business communities, and as well as our internal stakeholders also. We have working group suggestions of the trades, their representatives. From time to time, they make us give their suggestions and all that. We believe in participatory approach. Publicity, definitely for any approach, we have to create awareness, support, capacity building. definitely in-house technical competence is a must for not only for development of the project but for sustenance, sir. Yes, sir. Second. Pilot approach, phase approach is essential. Business process re-engineering, professional change management approach. That's all. Sir.
Good evening, everybody. I am Manish Khanna. I am representing Motorola Solutions India. I start my presentation basically with a snapshot of what a smart city should be. Some of the critical parameters I believe my fellow panel member also just now mentioned. But these are, again, I would like to reiterate: smart energy, smart water management, smart public services, because the citizen services has to be improved, smart buildings and homes, smart integration of all infrastructure, and to top it all, smart mobility. These are the key requirements for a city to become a smart city according to us. And mobility, I believe, is going to play a major role, not only in itself, but also would play a role, whether it's a smart energy metering, smart water management, or a smart public services. Everywhere, mobility is going to play a key role. And that is where Motorola, we feel, can play a major role in improving a city to become a smart city. So how does Motorola contribute? Motorola brings on table the mobility solutions through rugged handheld devices, which helps to increase productivity and efficiency. And that is the need of the hour, because that is what we need to improve to make a city to become a smart city. So we have introduced rugged handheld devices, through which anybody can access, enter data, and complete tasks right from the field. So how does it help? Now, social and health workers also can benefit, because they can do much more at the field level, because they can enter data at the field. They don't have to come back to office and do the homework again back. Similarly, police officers, they work in patrol cars. They can take decisions on the spot, because they can track criminals on the field itself. They don't have to come back to police stations and do the necessary tracking of the suspected criminals. Similarly, firefighters can download building plans, check the reports directly from their emergency sites to provide faster response. Similarly, field workers can start out their day in the field with the tools to access the files back in the office, upload information instantly, and they can also print reports also on the spot. So these are some of the applications where Motorola is deploying their applications on the rugged handheld devices, through which all the field workers are getting the necessary benefits, and they are thereby improving the productivity and efficiency in the system. This is what, again, the slide depicts the same. How do we improve productivity? Because we are reducing these various stages of the work which are generally involved, right from the generation of the service request to the entering of data into the application. So we are reducing the number of steps which are required to improve productivity in the system. And this is basically, now when we talk of enterprise mobility, there is a complete ecosystem which is involved, right from the mobile devices which are there with the wireless network, because we need to connect these devices through some connectivity. Then the applications play a very important role, because some application is required to run on those mobile devices, and overall then that ecosystem needs to be managed properly and remotely. So these four major pies basically contribute or add on to the complete ecosystem of the enterprise mobility. Now, when I say enterprise mobility, it's not that the enterprise mobility anybody can deploy any device and it will help the system. No, there are various considerations which need to be considered before finalizing a particular solution for a particular requirement. There are various parameters which needs to be considered. I have listed some of them here. Form factor of the handheld device becomes very important because it needs to be carried on the field by the worker. So it has to be very, very user friendly. Platform operating system again has to be enterprise class. It cannot be a normal consumer based operating system which runs out of or becomes end of life in maybe 1 or 2 years. Government projects, you know, normally work for 5 years typically, 5 to 7 years. So whatever device you finalize, or it has to work for over a period of a minimum 5 to 7 years. So that becomes a very, very critical factor. Communication needs obviously will depend on the application which you want to deploy on a handheld device. So whether you need a Wi-Fi system, whether you need a GPRS, GSM connectivity, so that will depend on the requirement. Display also becomes very important of the handheld device, because since if it has to be used on the field, the display on the handheld device should be sunlight readable. So that becomes a crucial factor. Similarly, data entry options, power, maintenance, these are some of the other critical factors which needs to be considered. Remote management, again, in the government project, when thousands of devices needs to be deployed in the system, the management of the devices centrally, remotely becomes paramount. If you deploy consumer mobile devices, it will not serve your purpose. That is what I'm trying to say here. And devices have to be rugged, durable, because so that they can last for 5 years. So all these factors becomes very important before deciding on any enterprise mobility application which you need to deploy. Now I would like to talk to you about some of the solutions which are important for a smart city. And these solutions, I will be talking of few of them, have been implemented worldwide and in some of the cities in India also. One of the important application which is being deployed now worldwide is the traffic management, or we call it as e-Challan. Now e-Challan is basically nothing but the automating the process of challaning. All of us must have been challaned one time or the other, and you must have gone through the manual process which a traffic inspector follows. While challaning you, he has to fill up the complete format on their writing pad. But this process can be automated using our handheld devices, along with the printer which can be connected to our handheld device using a Bluetooth connectivity. Now he just has to scan the driving license and the complete information can be captured on the device itself. Similarly, what challan has to be, for whatever offense he has to pay challan, that can be captured and a printed receipt can be issued automatically. All this can completely automate the entire process, improve again the efficiency and productivity of the traffic inspector, and he will be able to, I'm sure, spend more time on the patrol rather than challaning. So this is one e-Challan system which is being implemented now everywhere. Another application which I would like to talk about is mobile criminal identification solution. Again, it's an extension of the police department where they can track the criminals on the field itself. They don't have to bring them to the police station to identify them. On the field itself, using our handheld device, they can capture the fingerprint scan, and through the backend server, they can identify whether this is a record of some past criminal or not. If it's not, then it's okay. Otherwise, they can take whatever action is required to be taken on the field itself. So these type of devices again are being deployed by police departments worldwide and very, very crucial for managing a smart city. Now another important application for a smart city could be a waste collection management system. Right now, you know, it's all manual everywhere. No automated data collection for the same, no manual track, and everything is manual. Track and route management is everything is manual. There is no validation of whether the work has been performed or waste has been really collected also or not. This system also can be automated by using a RFID based solution. RFID again is a technology which uses the radio frequency through which we can basically identify or we can automate the recording of customer waste collection. We can track truck or route movements to optimize their efficiency. We can even track recycles compliance. And we can also pick up data with billing data. We can align that so that billing can be also generated automatically. So what are the benefits? We can verify the route completion times. We can verify customer pickups, whether it has been done on time. We can optimize the number of trucks being deployed. We can optimize the resources also being deployed. And in future, we can also incentivize for recycling those officials. We can integrate every data with the billing data. So these are future benefits which can be considered for deploying this type of technology. This is basically a picture depicting how it is done. Truck, we put a RFID reader on the outside of truck. RFID tags are put on the carts through which the waste is collected, and the onboard computer is also deployed on the truck to manage the truck movement along with the application software so that the entire system becomes automated. Similarly, now healthcare solutions in India especially are in dire straits. That's what we all keep talking about. But there are various solutions available in the market to automate those requirements. We from Motorola side also have multiple solutions to handle those healthcare requirements. We can basically medication administration solutions are available through which we can ensure that the right patient receives the right medication at the right time. We can also automate the management of blood tracking and verification of blood for transfusion, so avoid any errors in that. Similarly, asset management and tracking solution becomes very, very important for major hospitals across India. So we can track those assets, critical assets, which are required sometimes even in emergency situations to improve productivity. And obviously all those health hospitals require wireless broadband. Again, we can provide those connectivity solutions to hospitals. Another important application for healthcare is the e-health. Now, through the device, now this device can be given to the health workers which are being deployed all over India. Now, because what they can do is they can update the patient records. They can receive informations, plans and schedules. They can administer medicines on the field level itself and update the timesheets online at the spot itself. Again, so basically now this will help government to deploy their subsidy schemes efficiently in the service level, in the field level, using our handheld device. This again, some states are considering this for tracking the subsidy schemes being rolled out from the healthcare perspective. Another important automation which can be done and which is being done by various departments is basically RFID document tracking to locate documents quickly within the department. This type of requirements are very, very important for departments like land records, because they have to keep records of all the property documents, and so that they are easily accessible also. So they can track those files easily using RFID technology. Similarly, electronic toll collection, when we talk of highways and major roads being constructed all over the place, cities, now they have to be managed also properly, because the traffic has to flow properly and efficiently through that. So we can deploy again RFID technology at those toll plazas everywhere to reduce the travel time. It has various benefits. It can reduce wait time at toll booths. It can increase the highway capacity itself. So there are various benefits which are available if you deploy this technology at toll plazas all over the cities. Just a word on Motorola Solutions before I end, that we are a company of first with rich heritage of innovation. We believe in innovating, and that is what we have been doing for the last decades or so. We have various solutions available from our stable, which includes barcode scanning, RFID technology, mobile wireless networks, two-way radios, and I'm pleased to share with you that we hold #1 position in almost all the domains where we operate worldwide. In India, definitely we are #1 with the largest installed base in the country. We have the biggest R&D center in India next to USA. And we have a best partner ecosystem to manage all these applications and deploy these applications for any department in the government vertical. And these are a small list of worldwide customer base. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. So, what I am presenting is on GIS. Currently, I am working as collector of Wardha district. This is the work which I had done in Amravati, which is the ex-president Pratibha Patil Madam's district. That's about 200 kilometers from Nagpur. So, just as a background, smart city is the topic of the day, of the evening. These are some of the points I am going to run through. In any case, the urban population, like our Commissioner Municipal Administration has said, you will be surprised by the amount of urbanization happening in so-called rural Maharashtra. I mean, the rural-urban continuum is so strong. The smaller cities are actually growing as much as the larger ones, and that growth, it's a growth of concern. Whether this growth is planned or unplanned, a lot of new city areas are being brought in. The municipal councils are being expanded into rural areas. And at the same time, even for established bigger cities, there is a big need for revitalization of the city. Renewal of inner cities is an internationally very valid concept now. Inner city meaning where one would probably classify, Parel area as an inner city. Parel, how it has gone from mills to malls and so on, is a kind of a revitalization of the inner city. How can you put back economy into a dying part of a city? So that is something of great concern to our Urban Development Department of Government of Maharashtra. Redevelopment, old buildings are torn down, new buildings come up, and how do you maintain this? If you have read today's papers, there's a lot of talk about heritage. We are talking about 100-year plus, city like Mumbai. So all these are very pertinent thing in how we deal with urban administration. But having mentioned Mumbai, you cannot, miss out on the word slum. Of course, we got the Oscar for Slumdog Millionaire, but not all the slum dogs are millionaires. So there is a lot of slums. Dharavi is a big problem. And are we going to allow new Dharavis to come up? So how are we going to control that? There are informal settlements, informal livelihoods, migration, homelessness, pollution, green areas are being swallowed up. Ecological balance is gone. So, and we have the head of BEST with us who's moderating the session. Traffic and transportation is a big nightmare for people who manage it and for the people who use it. If anybody's been to Pune past 10 years and has gone today, you'll know what I'm talking about. Now, where are the livelihoods? Where are the job opportunities? Are we going to redevelop everything into malls? And so where are the jobs going to go? Where are the unemployed going to go? Are we going to say, go leave the city? No, there is this only place for high tech and smart city, but is it equitable? Is the place for rest? Is the place for recreation, health? Is there a place to sleep, or is there a condition to sleep peacefully in a city? That's become a big problem. Housing, we have my good friend Mr. Sudhanshu here who looks at Mahada of Bombay. Housing, low-cost housing. Low-cost housing in Mumbai is a conundrum. What does that mean anymore? What is low cost in Mumbai? Nobody knows. So, as an urban administrator, we look at infrastructure, how to create new things, renewal. JNURM talks about renewing. It's not about really building, but taking cities and renewing them, putting life back into them. Maintenance is a big, planning maintenance is a big exercise. Utilities, its quality and continuity of providing utilities. and most importantly, social infrastructure. How are you locating education, health, and so on. Civic things like firefighting, disaster management. Mumbai floods was a big news a couple of years ago. I mean, is it, has it, if suppose it starts raining this monsoon very heavily, are we in a position to tackle it? You know, we did flood mapping. I will talk about that very shortly. Do we have a map of the drainage of a city? How many cities in India have a drainage map? Do we have a watershed map of a city? Do we know about the urban watersheds? Most of us don't. Parking, pollution. So as an urban administrator, you know, we have dynamic data, multiple agency, we have BSNL, you know, water supply, electricity, and continuously each of them is planning something. And you know, continuously somebody has to monitor them. Response also has to be fast. And to do all this, where do you generate the resources from? Basically, the urban bodies are supposed to support themselves. You'll be surprised. You know, there's a lot of freedom in Indian urban governance. In Maharashtra, for example, we are very self-sustaining. A lot of money comes from government of India and Maharashtra government also. But the revenue generated in the city usually goes back to the city. You'll be surprised, in UK all the money goes to a central kitty and the government puts a formula and starts redistributing. So where do we have scope for generations? So you know, there's a lot of information to be managed. It's all unorganized, very haphazard. And how do you integrate all of these things? Now there is a solution in terms of GIS. You will say, okay, we'll set up a huge database, connect everything together. We have that data, we can query it. Then why do you need GIS? Let me give you a simple example. What the first known documentation of what a GIS is. It was City of London in something like 1860 or so. It was world's worst cholera epidemic. Thousands and thousands, you know, industrial revolution started and people were just dying. You know, no sanitation, there was no sewerage network. So people were there was one gentleman who started marking out the locations in which he took a map of City of London and started mapping out where are the cholera deaths happening. So he started mapping them one by one. He found it was a circular pattern and it was all radiating from a single point. And he found and located that single point, and that was the source of the pollution in a way that was tackled. That is the power of a geographical spatial data. What will never throw up in a tabular form, visually we can probably look at and understand these things much better. So it's a tool of information tracking and it's a tool of planning. As urban administrators, a lot of planning to be done, and it gives analytical metrics on a real-time basis. And the most importantly, it gives you a macro perspective of all those things which are happening. The thousands of things happening in real time which are all actionable things. So how fast do we react? A smart city cannot be a smart city unless you can react quickly and intelligently to this. So there are like health indicators, there are events, citizens' needs can be mapped, pollution for example, crime which the Motorola head has mentioned. You know, after what happened in Delhi, probably if you start mapping all the crimes against women, you will probably identify areas where things are happening. And maybe it is because if you put the utilities map on top of the crime map, probably you will realize that those roads don't have working street lights. So it is something about matching one data to another and finding out actionable points. Most importantly, are we going to provide an equitable growth for the urban economy? So revenue generation and resource allocation and so on are the advantages. So I'm straight away going to what we did with city of Amravati. Yeah, sure. So what we did is, first of all, we acquired the GIS data. The map we purchased through NRSA. It was a customized map from a US vendor, and along with that we started digitizing everything. All the data which we could find, we started digitizing in various attribute layers. We had town plan maps, we had like BSNL networks, MJP's water supply networks, we had road networks, street lights, street furniture, where are crossings of roads, you name it, and of course properties. So everything was geo-referenced, put on the map was digitized, we geo-referenced it, ground truthing was done, so we know exactly where it was. Even we had a tree survey, so we can even start marking out the trees and find out how the tree cover has changed over the years. Everything was digitized, and I am quite happy to share with you, apart from Mumbai and Thane, which are very big cities, Amravati comes very close into the kind of richness of data capture. We captured almost 60 plus layers of attribute data. And that's social infrastructure, civil infrastructure, and so on. So we got basic database, maps, we digitize it, and then we have a web-based GIS application, and a geo database runs on a very heavy, we have the ArcGIS backend, and that is supported by a web GIS application, which is the front end in which the employees and the citizens will access it. So this is kind of a screenshot in which on the left side you can see all the layers, and within a minute, actually, with the permission of the chair, either now or towards the end, we can show you a small demo of 2 minutes of exactly how the software works. So we got property tax. Now, more than 20 to 30% of new buildings were simply not being reported by our field staff. It's a fact of the matter. So when we start looking at it from a satellite, no building can really escape. So we we are expecting about 20 to 25% capture of uncaptured building data. And this is integrated with the existing MIS. For example, the Commissioner of Municipal Administration has shown you the property tax module. This is going to be completely integrated with the property tax module, and we can show you how in the demo we can go down to any single spot and actually find out. I can choose as a commissioner of the corporation, one can choose an area and find out how many new buildings have come up, what are the property tax pendencies, and so on. And everything is going to be visual and easily trackable. Yeah, sure. And town planning, and this is again along with auto DCR, auto development control rules for building permissions, automated layout plans, and so on. So everything is going to be visually represented and shown on the maps. So these are all the maps which we will demonstrate shortly. The other thing is water supply. This I want to highlight because this is a very important issue. I'll just take a second to say that there is a 24/7 water supply in city of Amravati, and which is actually a very difficult task. And water losses are monitored, bulk consumption, individual monitoring, and water theft is also monitored using the GIS system. So even we have pipe connections mapped out. So if you want to expand, we can actually plan how to expand, which side, where are the pressure losses, and so on. Electricity maintenance and road network widening, and so on. Now, the benefits are very obvious. Now, what is it there for the citizens? So it could be a great tool of pushing public opinion. They can take up these issues with their local authorities, with their corporators. People will be open to know what has happened to their place in the last 15 years, whether their corporators have really pushed for growth in their area, for example. Information is power and we are giving it to the people. And these are other things which could be seamlessly integrated. You know, e-Mojini is the measurement, e-registration, e-property tax. So the entire gamut of property could be done together in a single system. Someone said, you know, geography is history. You don't need geography anymore. You know, you can do anything anywhere. You know, geography doesn't matter. But we feel, you know, after using GIS or to again unnecessarily coin a new word, G-governance, I think geography will help, you know, urban administration make history. It's been a great help. And with the permission of the chair, I'll, after all the speakers finish, we will demonstrate the software to you. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, panel members. I am Vasant Prabhu, Deputy Municipal Commissioner from MCGM. मला वाटतं मुंबई महानगरपालिकेची ओळख आपणा सर्वांना वेगळी करून द्यायची काही आवश्यकता वाटत नाही मला. We'll just go through as time is very much limited. So I want to focus from the smart city point of view some 2-3 more projects. But just we'll go through what is MCGM. As you all know, in entire Mumbai we have got 24 wards and 550 locations. Why I am mentioning this, that you can judge our network area, what use it is. Our budget is 26,500 crores, which may be more than some states. We serve for 1.19 crore citizens and our employees 1,17,000. Mainly our focus will be on citizen services, then revenue collections and improvement expenditure and monitoring control. What are the expenditure we are doing on the city? Our history of e-governance will go back in some may say in 2004, where we have started with re-engineering of our business processes, because any computerization required great amount of business re-engineering. We appointed McKinsey company in 2004. And then later on, we have decided to implement a ERP system. Naturally, by tender through, we have got SAP, and we start implementing SAP, as is a world-known ERP system. Of course, though we have started in 2006, we have got some legacy systems also. We are not doing that, we have not done any computerization prior to that. We have got our property tax, we have got our water billing, we have got our Octroi. The property tax software is done by our people, own people. And these 3 systems are already there, legacy systems. So when we start with SAP, SAP definitely has got certain fixed modules: finance, material management, project system, real estate, fleet management, citizen portal, e-procurement, and human resources. Along with that, all these 3 our legacy systems, we have to bring it on same platform. At present, with this system, we are giving every year new licenses of 70,000 and renewal of 5 lakh licenses. So you can understand what are the huge quantum it is. This is our system actually. Citizen services we are giving through 24 wards. We have got our wards. In every ward, we have got citizen facilitation center, where you can approach for birth, death, the water bills, birth death certificates, water bills, assessments, everything will be at one center. And additional to that, you can make payment for any ward from any ward. If suppose you want a license from the T ward, you can make the payment in A ward also, which is far away from the system. So that is the advantage. We are giving total 118 services in our CFC centers. Just to give an idea what is our network is, we have got at the top primary data center, then we have got 24 ward offices, we have got 25 hospitals, 50 pumping stations, 25 garages, 5 dumping grounds including transfer stations also, 16 reservoirs, 3 control rooms and 27 fire stations. And remember, all are connected with WAN network to our primary data centers. Now these are our main thing is that citizen empowerment, citizen portal with 118 services, as I told you, re-engineering all these processes. For administrative empowerment, we are using finance, material management, fleet workshop, project, SRM, e-quotations, employee empowerment. For that, human resource management, which will be start within 3-4 months. We are now at the final stage of implementing that HR module. I will just run through this. FICO, that is accounts and finance. We have got definitely initially we have got single entry system cash based, which is converted into double entry accrual as per JNURM norms. Then later on project system, it is a very important system, project system. All our projects are running through PS. Here in that accounts finance, I want to tell you, not every transaction, each and every transaction, every financial transaction is running through FICO. So it is recorded, everything. Similarly, project system, all our projects are done through this PS. In there certain points are there that automatic selection, last point, 25% vigilance NOC. We are selecting some 25% worst for vigilance checking. That are also done through the systems, which are additional to that existing SAP. We have to make certain customization for this thing. In the last year, we have done 2,663 numbers of projects through these systems. Material management is another thing. All materials, anything, any small material which we have to purchase, we are doing this through modules. 100% computerization in this part. I want to tell you one thing that when we have started this project, module, implementation of module, we have got so many departments. So everybody has given their list of materials and we have created material list which has gone to nearly 4 lakhs. So later on we come to know there are a lot of materials which are duplicate and we have to cleanse all those records. And in some 2010, we come to final list of the materials which is now 16,000. So these are definitely learning curves for us. Total purchase we have also given, it is to 622 crores. Then e-procurement, it is simple thing, vendor registration, we are inviting bids from the portal and we are doing this system, totally computerized, totally secure method of opening commercial bids, which is very important in this part. Lastly, human resource, as I already told you, it is at the final stage, we are going to implement. You can understand it's a big project, 1,17,000 workers are there, total staff is there. So it is a big project and we have taken all consideration that reservation policy of government and extra everything. So this will be implemented within 3-4 months. Fleet management, we have got a very huge fleets. For garbage, I think some of the panel members, I think Motorola has told about the fleet management and that RFID. So we are going to implement that also. There is our future project for tracking of vehicles, garbage vehicles. As I rightly pointed out, there are things escaping that on the route. Some of the points will be missed. So for tracking that, we are going to use that fleet management. Now e-quotation, now here I have to give in details. This is our history, what I told you. And I am going to point out some of the, sir, 2-3 points only. E-quotation, initially in our 24 wards, what is our system is that we are giving a contractor to each ward and he will carry out all the works in that entire ward, what it may be. That contract may be for 2 years and he will carry out all the works. Everybody is comfortable with that except I think citizens. because he doesn't bother. He has got a contract up to years, he has got the amount funds, and the work are being carried out. It has become a monopoly. Some 16, 17 contractors, they have grabbed all the entire works of the Mumbai city. So we have to break the shackles. So we have then designed the system, because in SAP, there is not a separate system for e-quotation. Then what we have done, we have taken the combination of two systems. This is the first one and second one, SRM and PS model. We have got PS model and we have got SRM. Then this is the green portion you are seeing, this is the PS, and second one is the SRM. We combine these two and then we weld a e-quotation system. Now, any contractor who has done vendor registration to our MCGM, he can fill the contract on the portal. So there is nobody can deny a chance to anybody now. Anybody can come, done a simple registration. There is no deposits or nothing else, no documents he has to submit. He has to do a simple registration, vendor registration, and apply for the contracts. So this system is very well implemented now. For last year also we have done a lot of works through these systems, and this year also. Luckily now I am thankful to the organizers also, they have started this very late, because we are busy in a meeting. Commission has held a meeting with DMCs and all assistant commissioners just to sort out the issue in the e-quotations. Because some of the stakeholders in these systems, they have definitely got some problems. So the issue has to be sorted out. But luckily we found out that there are no major issues in the softwares or in the systems or anything else. There are some minor issues here and there. So this is the e-quotation which has been implemented in the MCGM just to make the changes of the old system, which system was running for 25 to 30 years. And now we have started with this. And I hope it will continue with great success. So no tender fee, no AMD, no packet A and B process. Commercial report will come directly on the portal. And it is very simplified. He will get an email directly. Vendor will get an email as soon as he becomes an L1, the lowest this thing. Then another is the dynamic rate analysis also we have done, because many people they have done to sabotage the system. They have done the 40-50% below. Then what we have done, we have taken the last 3 months rate, make an weighted average of that, and then started to make the new rate analysis. So that problem also getting sorted out. So this is the e-quotations which we have started. I will move fast. Second point is e-office which we have implemented. Some of the prior my speakers have also informed about the e-office. This is the e-office which we have got from NIC, and we have started this for the paperless office. The problem is that we have started this in December, but later on we come to know that they are not going to give us some 20,000 users at the initial stage. So we have got some 250 users. Initially we have decided at least one department we can start with e-office. E-office is a simple software like our Gmail, and it is easy to operate, friendly user. So our commission has taken the decision, we will start it from the top, and then first municipal commissioner to additional commissioner, then to deputy municipal commissioner, and then from the last 1st May, we have started it with our all HODs and assistant municipal commissioners. And it is very easy now to track the files, to move the files, and definitely it will help in the future to all the citizens. Because now file moving, just if I have to click, it will be clicked and then file will be in the next person's tray, maybe an additional MC or MC. And he can also, the main point is that there are hundreds of files, lakhs of papers, so nobody can trace out. Tracking system is not easily possible. Yeah, sir. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the office which we are implementing now. And just last I will mention this, I will move out. Scanning and digitization. Sir, I will take just 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Scanning and digitization. This is the another project which we are doing. We have got some 80 crores of documents which we want to scan. But our say is that RTI people has to come to you and make an application for an RTI. We can make available all those documents. So we have started, we have given 2 agencies, and already 10 crores papers we have started for scanning. Scanning and digitization, indexing and keywords, so that any person can get these papers on the net also. So this is another our project. And lastly, I will just move fast, is Auto DCR. Auto DCR is another software. As you know, the Campacola incident which happened, and unfortunately I was the in charge there also for demolition, because I am holding that area. So there I have found that many people are not knowing whether they what is authorized, unauthorized, approved plans and all these things. We have already got our 2 crores document scan of the BP. So we have taken a decision now to open these documents. Maybe in 1 or 2 months, we will now open these documents to the people also, so that they can know what is unauthorized and what is authorized structures. And that information will definitely help. And because of this incident only, because of this we have decided, otherwise we are going to use that for our internal purpose. But now we are going to open that and we will make one service. I think that's time is very short. So thank you very much. Thanks all.
Again, but certainly we are running out of time. It's already 7:30 and I think half the panel only have spoken. So any more presentations are left? So of course one is yours. So what I'll request is that you please go ahead with your presentation and then rest of us can speak for a few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. And I think we need to give audience a chance because you cannot simply kind of make them, bombard with so much information and they're sitting, so they need to ask few questions with panelists at some level. So I think we should now positively finish with the next 15 minutes with at least our part of talk. And I'm sure presentations are there, people can go through the presentation subsequently. So I'll request PowerPoint slides, you can simply run through because there's no need to read the slides. So please,
So, good evening all of you and panelists on the dais. So, I am Raj Jadhav from Delhi, India. So, in context of the smart cities project, smart cities this topic, and I am just touching upon this city surveillance or surveillance. Here I am going to talk about the surveillance, city surveillance. As you know that you can read in the newspaper and you have lots of news about it that different government agencies are going to deploy video surveillance across the city. But is that enough to make our cities safe and save our cities as well as lives? So are we really ready for that? And that's a compatible solution for all of us. So I'm just taking my agenda beyond city surveillance. The next city surveillance, that is a collaborative city surveillance, and then some of the elements of the collaborative city surveillance, then some innovative solutions, then one of the solutions which is like a teething problem as on today about the school buses and the ill mannerism happening around this inside our social environment and societies. So, and then about one of the case studies which is very interesting, we have done it with one of the government agencies, and way forward for safe cities and lives. Here is what we look at. Government has a very small job in city surveillance. Government can deploy the sensors and cameras on the roads and public areas, but you see the commercials, residentials, retails and educations and all these things, who's going to do that? See, that's we. We are going to deploy the sensors and videos and cameras, and we have to have the solution in place. And then only we can say that with the collaborative approach, we have the complete video surveillance or city surveillance in place. So it's not only the government's role. Government's role is hardly anything here, and our roles is very important. So we have to look into that. What are the right solutions, right things, right norms and policies in place to have this kind of surveillance solutions in place. So the scope for this city surveillance, as you know, the incidents in Hyderabad, what happened, because that place the government is unable to place the sensor cameras or the sensors in place, but then now we have come out, the government has come out that okay, all the traders or retail shops are surrounding the private sectors has to have the cameras and sensors in place. So then workplace securities, then secured government places, the public government places, and all these, can we have the common approach to integrate together and build a uniform solution across the society, across the public and private sectors? So the next elements, what we feel that in collaborative surveillance. So the surveillance, there are intelligent solutions available based on the proprietary technologies and some of the old technologies called CCTV and all. But are they talk to each other? Are they interdependent? Can we share with the different government agencies? All those kind of things. So it is important to have IP-based surveillance or IP-based video surveillance or different types of surveillance. Like it's not only video surveillance. There are like electromagnetic EMI surveillance. Then we have biochemical surveillance, and all the system has to be integrated together to make our lives safe and cities safe. The next is uniform standards and policies. Are they in place? Is there any government body to set the standards and policies and issue the notifications to the private and public sectors? These are the ways of setting up the surveillance in place. These are the video codecs are required. These are the minimum resolutions are required to recognize and identify and make the evident of those things to the police departments or any security agencies. Are they secure enough? The videos are secure enough whether they are not captured by anybody else, and are they resilient? Are they the total infrastructure are in place? So in terms of the bandwidth, in terms of the resiliency of the content, whether the content is captured at local place or the different places, is there any norms available for that? Is there any technology available and in place, or we can make everything in uniform manner, so that all agencies across the government can utilize all this infrastructure and make it uniform, and at any moment available, information is available for everybody. So mandatory surveillance requirement like protection against vandalism. What are the whether we have the post-mortem kind of things, like once it is happened and then we started searching the video and records and all those things. Rather than that, can we have the alert and momentary systems which can immediately give the instructions or alerts to the respective agencies, and that agencies can take on them. Evidence to the police departments against the antisocial elements. The immediate action has to be there, and all that, whether that right technology is placed in place. Support to the government collaborative surveillance against terrorism. The antisocial elements. So we have any preventive mechanism, preventive video surveillance in place. So what are those? Like shops, premises, monitoring systems, around shops and premises monitoring system, inside the shops and all, and are they integrated together so that any agency can immediately intervene in that system and take out that, rather than like in a newspaper we can read the news like, okay, police department has captured the videos, captured the content and all, and they are sending that information to the particular department for analysis, and then maybe a couple of days or weeks or so the information is available or analysis is available for the final result. So that itself is going to make life miserable, the entire system miserable. So what are the new things we need to do that? Whether it is possible to have the collaborative system in place. So challenges, safety and security, loss preventions, vandalism in shops, all these are like when we look at the retails at different shops and premises, so these are the antisocial elements are around this one, and the merchandising and operations, which all these are affecting our all day-to-day lives. So one of the solutions, though, like some of the panelists told that, okay, we should not show the devices, but here the real-time example I would like to give, like the cloud is the solutions wherein we can have the complete control and monitoring mechanism or thin kind of recording of the contents. So wherein any agencies can tap in the information, and the information would be available for their analysis. So in between we can have the servers which are capturing the information without knowing to the agencies, maybe the people involved in anti-social elements. And then the applications, which like applications are not only the browsers and all, but now everyone is carrying the smart gadgets. So whether we can make it available on the smart gadgets. The next very important thing is nowadays in the buses and all, many things are, many like school child molestations are things are happening and all. Whether we have a right solution in the place, because I heard that some of the people have already deployed the surveillance inside the bus, but are they capable? We should not do the post-mortem. Is there any technology or is there any right approach available so that the immediate intervention can be done and everything can be bring under the control? So the most schools' objective is like what students are, how they are boarding the bus, or how they are what exactly they are doing and all, and that information lively available at the school console or lively available to the parents. So this is one of the project I myself personally implemented in one of the school in Juhu. So it's as a corporate social responsibility from our company side. We didn't find that to make money out of it and all, but this is a very successful solution, and the parents can monitor the child, where the child is exactly, what exactly is doing inside the bus and inside the campus. And then the solution is very simple. What is required is the cameras and the 3G and 4G routers inside the bus and local storage. And nowadays cameras also have the local storage, or you can use the dedicated storage and cloud to monitor and administer the entire scenario. And by that you can take a control. We have worked with some of the ISPs and to bring the to have the uniform signal levels across the area bus route, and we have captured all these things and we successfully deployed this project in one of the schools in Juhu. And the next scope of this project is we are providing the solutions that where bus is going to stand and how long it's going to is standing, and all the details to the school console. The next project what we have like is with one Tamil Nadu government we have done with the registration department. The department, what this department wanted to do is like to record all the activities happening during the registration process. So we have the main challenges where the management statewide distributed surveillance system, recording video footage of the registration process as evidence and keep track of activities during the registration process, and provide video footage to the registration application like marriages and whatever the land property registrations and all. So the department once registration is happened and all, the department hand over the CD to the respective client. The innovative solutions focus is create transparency in registration process, keeping records and maintaining digital data in the digital format, recording and providing the evidence of the registration, and surveillance of branch offices, headquarters and zonal offices, and all the places the live monitoring is also possible. So solution is work across the zonal offices and central offices, and all information is available with sub-registrar's cabin at any moment, with thin recording as well as the live monitoring of the system. So this is what the entire project is. Each place you have at SR office, 2 cameras are deployed, and the controls are available with, and the recording is available at the zonal offices and central offices, and all the recording as well as monitoring is possible at the local level as well as zonal office as well as central office. So this is a very successful case with the Tamil Nadu registration office, what we have done. So hope, thank you, I have done it in time.
Can somebody help for me? Can somebody tell where is that? The presentation is stored. share the work. You can close it and it will be on the desktop. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I will drop my presentation, but I would like to see one or two small videos which will give you a global perspective of what a smart city should look like.
These are the top 10 smartest cities in the world according to the wonderful site coexist.com. Number 10, Barcelona. The city is a pioneer in smart city and low carbon solutions. Number 9 is Hong Kong. It's been a leader in the use and adoption of smart cards, which are already used by millions of residents for services like public transit, library access, building access, shopping, and car parks. Number 8, Copenhagen. The city has committed to carbon neutrality by 2025, and 40% of its citizens regularly commute via bicycle. Berlin is 7th and is testing out vehicle-to-grid technologies in the hopes of creating a virtual power plant from electric vehicles. Tokyo is the 6th smartest city in the world and will create a smart town in the suburbs in partnership with major industry. Number 5 is London, and it scored relatively high across the board. It's been well recognized for some of its sustainability innovations, like its congestion tax and its robust transit system. New York is 4th, and it scored higher than most other cities in all of the categories except quality of life. It's teamed with innovator IBM, a move that is expected to save the city around $100 million over a 5-year period. Paris, France is 3rd. It already has a highly successful bike-sharing program known as Velib, and just last month its mayor launched a similar model for small EVs called Autolib. Toronto is 2nd. It's the smartest city in North America, scoring well across the board. The private sector is getting in on the action too, setting up a Smart Commute Toronto initiative to increase the city's transit efficiency. And the smartest city in the world is Vienna, Austria. It was the only city that ranked in the top 10 in every category. It's establishing bold, smart city targets and tracking their progress to reach these goals with programs like Smart Energy Vision 2050, Roadmap 2020, and Action Plan 2012 to 2015. The rankings were determined by the city's scores on 4 global categories: innovation, green ranking, quality of life, and digital city.
Just one small. This is how Mumbai should look like. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I just got about 20 odd slides. Therefore, I decided not to do any presentation. Okay, so I'll save you the headache. Because we all talked about smart cities, and there's various definitions which are coming through for smart city. Let me put it a very simple way. The smart city is like this conference room. People who are actually trying to listen, they want to do something else. We are on the stage, we are trying to give them certain gyan, which they may or may not like it. Okay. There are organizers who want to actually bundle everyone together so that we get the best of the knowledge for everyone. So these are all desperate information. Nobody wants to know what each one of us want to do together. It's all disintegrated. Okay. Smart city is the one which I think, in my personal view, leave aside the technological definition, is the one, if I want something, I get information to do that. It's a power to do it. As simple as this. Forget about surveillance, forget about water, transportation, everything. We can talk internally about what we are trying to do. It's our housekeeping. It's our responsibility to do the housekeeping. I'm sorry, but government departments, if they're doing their work, it's their housekeeping. It's not citizen services. They are supposed to actually do that. What citizens are supposed to get is my road clean? I actually come Mumbai every time, and it's a forget about Mumbai, any other city. It's a beautiful construction goes on. The amazing roads are laid, but when the road is laid, the next of it is the entire dirt and the concrete left behind. Nobody finishes the job properly. Okay, is the city smart? Is the road smart? It's not. So what are we talking about smart city? Surveillance. We are talking about safety and security and surveillance, and sir talked about GIS mapping of utilities with crime mapping. Amazing stuff. Memphis Police Department does the same thing. They actually were the highest crime rated county in US, and by doing a GIS map to be more sensitized about what they should do and what they should not do. Make the people smart first. Making city smarter is the last agenda. Second step, processes. Process is something in a consulting way. Process is something which is a measurable procedure where there's a key performance indicator for completion of an activity. That's what is the process. Now, most of the time there is no process, it's only procedure. You should do that, but in what time? In what way? Which is the best? There are projects, a number of projects which are being contracted. And we were just having a little chat, and there are several other, government goes and contracts projects, and they give out a procedure-based contracts. A tendering is not a process, it's a procedure, because you follow X parameters. But do you follow also that the vendor who's actually going to get the contract, is he financially viable to even deliver that project? That's what is the process comes where you are not checking the performance indicators for giving out a contract. So first of all, you need to do your capacity building. Second, you get the processes clear. Final comes the technology. Technology is just an enabler. I can give you a device to do a chalaning. I can give you a device to do a water management. I can give you a device to do a women safety helpline on a mobile device. Those are technological. Technology can do wonders. But technology cannot do improvement of your behavior. Technology cannot do improvement of process. Those are two things which we need to do it. So smart city from my standpoint is something where the capacity building is extremely important. Second is you need to focus on the processes, get straight on the processes, make the performance indicators for every process to complete. Don't make it as a procedural activity. Don't make it as a bureaucratic activity. And finally is the technology. In the technology there is, don't look at from what database to use. Don't look at what server to be used. You have to look at what SLAs needs to govern and give me my best output. If you are saying that I want to actually do best to my citizen, forget about technology. And if you say you know your department well, the technology guys know the technology well. So if you want to fuse it together and make it as a smart project, then only talk about your processes, capacity building. Let the technology guys talk about technology. Only focus on SLAs. Don't take out projects in which you mention that server should have 10 CPUs, should have printer with so many cartridges. That's not required. You are supposed to actually say that my citizen should be able to get this service in 2 hours, flat, done. Deliver only on that. Forget about whether you get Red Hat, whether you get Oracle, whether you get IBM, whether you get Microsoft. That's not the concern of the citizen. Citizen never looks at technology. At least in my non-IBM role, I have never asked for a technology. I've never known whether my utility bill which comes to my home is delivered through a Microsoft device or through a IBM product or through a Red Hat. I only think whether the billing is correct or not, whether what check I'm paying is going on time and I'm not getting a late fee. That's what I'm interested about. I'm not interested about technology. So smart cities is something where you actually make the smart people, smart processes, and use the smart technology. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. I know it is too late and everybody wants to go home if you have in Mumbai. If you don't have, please log on to our website, because the lottery for this year, 2013 MADA, is going on. It's live and going on. And we have many other IT initiatives going on currently in MADA. I will take this opportunity to ask solution providers present here, integrators, software developers, to come to MADA. We are now in the process of redesigning the whole processes that we follow in our organization so that we can provide better services to people. I was just thinking about, I never heard about any definition of smart city, but I was just trying to think what it could mean. I think a smart city is can be a city which can adapt to a changing situation, changing economy, changing needs of a society. And in my view, housing and transportation should be in the first three items in priority list when we are considering anything relating to smart city. And this is where MADA comes in. In Mumbai today, just to tell you some figures, national average density today is approximately around 3,500 people per square kilometers. Mumbai it is 28,000 per square kilometers. And you must be knowing that today more than about 55% of Mumbai lives in slums. About 37 square kilometers out of say 435 square kilometers are under slum. And so if you just calculate the density, it will come to whooping 1.7 lakh people per square kilometers. That is under slum. So if you do not have houses where people can stay, and if you do not have transportation, adequate transportation so that people can go to the work, then we are obviously not talking about smart city. I have to finish in 1 minute, so I'll just say that for this year's lottery, we are simplifying things for you. This year, we are introducing, or we have already introduced, online payment, which means if you are anywhere in India or in the world, you can apply for our lottery sitting at home. You need to have just a scanner or a camera by which you can take a photograph and upload your photograph, your signature or your application. Which means today we are serving inside Maharashtra through more than 100 banks in each district, starting from Gadchiroli to Nandurbar, more than 15 in Mumbai, where you can go and drop your application, obviously after filling it online, or if you are sitting in Delhi or in America or in Singapore, you can just fill it online, pay your EMD through card, credit card, debit card or net banking, and upload your photograph, your application will be processed. there was some news in the newspaper a few days back that number of applications for MADA houses are going down. But one should realize this, that over the last 3 years, when we have moved from manual system of lottery to electronic system, the number of duplicate applications and fraudulent applications, forged applications have been going down, because we have been tracking those applications through use of various data. For example, PAN card, it's compulsory now. Bank account number is compulsory now. Aadhaar card is compulsory now. So we are using these interfaces, the databases which are outside MADA, to bring down the number of fraudulent applications. Once again, I'll just request you to visit MADA, either on the website or to our office. Once again, invitation to all software developers to visit MADA, meet us. We are in the process of overhauling the entire system. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. In fact, we have heard a lot of things about smart city, but I will give one of the panelists real, credit to sum it up very nicely, that what smart cities should actually mean. So capacity building, the process and the technology aspect. Because what we have discussed here, I suppose most of the panelists have talked about process and technology aspect, which is probably the core theme of this conference. Of course, I also had a small presentation because transportation, and as you have heard, that smart city means mobility and smart transport services. So my presentation is there for everybody to see, so if somebody wants to see. I'll just take 2 minutes as to what we have done and try to make the city transport smarter. We have been doing ticketing for 100 years through the punch ticketing system. So in BEST now we have moved on to electronic ticketing system. That was the first step. Second step is to move from electronic ticketing, which is a thermal printed ticket by a handheld device, to a card kind of a system where you have a loaded card for yourself, so that you just carry the card based on cashless system. Now that also we have introduced. The third important aspect is, as somebody talked, that what public want, you need to look at. Today, people are traveling in Mumbai with different modes of transport. Somebody is traveling, and most of the people actually have to use multiple mode of transport. Because a smart city should ideally have a very smart, connected transport system. Unfortunately, in Mumbai, we don't have that. So your bus stop or your bus station, your railway station, your place of work or your malls, multiplexes, they are not connected. So you have to really, use multiple systems, that you start from a house, go to a closest bus stop, then go to a railway station. Now metro station and monorails will also be coming, but still they are not interconnected. So at least what we have looked into, that at least the ticketing aspect, if it can be integrated. So we have come up with the technology where the card, BEST ticket card, can be used on other modes of transport, and I am hopeful that at least with metro and monorail, that integration will come in near future. And the last part, which I personally feel in transport systems, is the information aspect, the passenger information aspect. Today, place like Mumbai, you don't know when your next bus will be coming. Even railways, even though they run on a dedicated corridor, a slight interruption somewhere, technology-wise or any kind of other interruption, can really put the schedule in haywire. Now, you need to know about the schedule. So for buses, at least, we have now tried to create a system where we are putting up GPS-based systems in the bus and providing that information through a dedicated portal as well as through a mobile technology. So you can actually stand on a stop, send an SMS, and come to know about the buses arrivals, as to what buses are arriving on this particular bus stop, expected time of arrivals. Later, the next step is, of course, put those display boards on each and every bus stop, which then, what we have seen probably across the cities in the world, that you stand on a bus stop, you see your bus, and you just look at the display when the next bus is arriving. So you are not really required to stand at that particular stop and keep waiting for your bus. You actually, if you have 15 minutes, there's a close by bookshop, you can simply enter in the book, buy something, and all those kind of things you can do this. So that's the next step which we have thought of. So e-ticketing, cashless card, and the PIS, they have been already introduced in the BEST. And as the system move onwards, this escalation of all these systems, of course ticketing and card system is already operational on all the buses. The PIS part still not operational on all the buses, which is likely to come in future. With that, I'll finish my part of information regarding smart cities. But what we have heard today, that various aspects of smart cities has been discussed by different panelists. Now I think there's still, of course, the dinner time is already overshot by half an hour. But if some quick questions, maybe for another 5-10 minutes, it's already 8:05. So 10 minutes, maybe 3 or 4 questions, and somebody wants to take up, please feel free to ask those questions and address to a specific panelist. That will be better. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. My name is Harish Dunake. I am part of Wipro. Sir, this question actually is not a question. This is maybe a suggestion you can say, or if you want to answer this, you can answer. Anybody from you? Actually, sir, Mr. Murthy communicated and talked about the role which all of us collectively need to play to communicate with our citizens, to help them, actually to ask them to help themselves. So what are you doing as multiple organizations to communicate with citizens?
I think that's, you're asking in terms of public sector, like government, what government is doing, or what you want the...
Yeah, I mean,
there are two different aspects.
I realize there is a tremendous lack of communication with citizens. I mean, we miserably are, slow and low also while communicating about the help you require from citizens. There is a role which citizens are supposed to play, but unfortunately, citizens don't really play their own part of role. And I can see some great work done by Western Railway, organizations like Central Railway, and you guys work really hard in the set of constraints you guys have. But then, like even BST for that matter. But then the communication is not happening. So how and by, what are the modes you think you will be taking up to address this challenge?
In the concept of smart cities, if we see globally, normally in India we have not reached to that stage of PPP model, that is private-public partnership. In smart city concept, it is PPPP, that is public, private, and people's partnership. So what you have said is the people component. Definitely this 4 Ps model is very relevant, and the communication will happen once the things start taking place in that direction.
In fact, I think now what most of the people in government setup have presented, if you see about the cities council services, public delivery services, what municipal corporations are doing, what MADA is doing, what the e-office is doing, all these systems has an inbuilt component which actually allow people to register their say in their systems. So this is a step where you say that communication is actually moving. Earlier, most of these government systems, they used to be totally one way. But now at least there's a forum available to the public to reach, and it's mandated now that all the offices in government especially, they need to have their website. The Right to Information Act is one important aspect where people need to be told what are their rights and what kind of information they can take from the government, and they can then provide feedback through the various web portals in government sector. So to that extent, I suppose the communication aspect is being addressed by the government agencies. Similar things I'm sure most of the service providers in public arena, they do. So of course, the one aspect in this still remains, that is the capacity building part which was talked about. And there I suppose that the initiative will come from our education system. So the government has already taken steps there also. If you see, Right to Education Act is the first step in that direction. So as your education level improves, I am sure the communications will also improve. So to that extent, I think things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah. From the private sector point of view, let me talk about IBM perspective. See, we are big in terms of employee base in India. So I can't number it, but it's a substantial. We are one of the largest. So what we do is worldwide, we actually organize something called JAM. Jams are just a minute kind of a stuff. Every employee for a period of 4 days, he actually contributes his ideas. How vague it is, he actually contributes his ideas. Those ideas are conceptualized into new technologies and solutions. For example, in some cases, we also say that I need to improve traffic in the city of Bangalore because IBM is headquartered there. So we spend our time and energy as individuals and say that I am willing to let my mobile GPS be allowed to be open for a trial services in which, if, for example, if there are 50,000 IBMers going from different part of the city to Embassy Golf Links, which is the head office. So that means I know 50,000 mobile phones, if they can be tracked, I know how traffic is moving. Okay? So that's what we are trying to do. We are actually helping, we are creating those models along with the NGO in Bangalore. We are also doing certain kind of other projects for various other cities. So this is called City in Motion or traffic management stuff. And this is what we contribute as IBM or individual employees towards this involvement in the smart city activity.
Good evening. My name is Apurva. I'm from D-Link. Just a small question. When we talk about smart cities, there is always, as he mentioned, that time and the money. These are the two very important aspects which can really enforce a better in development of a better city. So why there is a lot of delays in all the public works which are happening, and why the money part shoots up? So are we really working in this particular direction to make it better?
I suppose one of the things somebody also talked about is, planning a project on activity. And why there's a project delays. Because if you actually end up tied up in processes and procedures, rather than the service level, delivery part as to what your objective of a particular project is. Now, this issue was also talked that in a government, it's a very dynamic process. So these things keep changing so often that most of the government projects, what initially they conceptualize, and when the actual implementation part starts, the things are vastly different. And I'm sure most of you people who have worked in the government, you have the experience where what the original, what is your word that we do the initial part? RFP is the government does, but when we work out the, I'm just missing that word, SRS. Service level, when we do the service SRS, and what actually, how it moves. The moment, because the thing is, the process is, based on today we work out the SRS. And the time period which was taken up in the project, if it is not reasonably good enough, and if it is not really adhered to, the things change very fast. And that's one reason why there's a project delay. And since in government, if the cost changes, then taking approval for the revised cost is again a big issue. Therefore, the projects which have been designed on delivery part, they have done very well. So suppose you talk about that, okay, this is what service I want to be delivered with this kind of, you define the service. Now, whosoever delivered that service at the lowest cost probably gets the contract in government, even today. We did it same thing like MSRTC or even BST. When I said this e-ticketing system, we said we want this ticket to be delivered in this fashion. So whosoever does it on the least cost, and there the project timelines are within those 8-9 months. And it did get completed because whatever changes comes, it is from the vendor. So whatever technology changes, he wants to make it all his own solutions. So I think now government, in fact, designing projects, if you see, the Maharashtra surveillance system project in Mumbai city, that has been again worked out on these kind of levels. So maybe as government is learning from these processes or these systems, project delays will come down. So I suppose we have really overshot the time. We were supposed to finish all these things by 7 o'clock, then we decide 7:30, it's almost now 8:15. So I think on behalf of my fellow panelists, I really thank the people here in the hall to be so patient and try and cooperate. And my fellow panelists, some of them I've really hurried up, so I'm sorry for that. But it's a part of the responsibilities given to me, and I thank you all for cooperating. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I think let's give a big hand to all of the panelists and the chair. We are all aware that this was a very tough session, and I think like only smart people could have managed this session on smart cities. so may I request the chair to kindly give a token of appreciation to all our speakers. So, sir, Gupta sir, kindly present this memento. We will start with Jarrad ji, Commissioner of. So, thank you. Okay. Thank you, sir. What happened? Okay. Upside हो जाइए, please. Yeah. Where the smartness can fail. Yeah. Thank you, Murthy. Mr. Manish. Sir. Thank you. Thank you. Piyush showed the nice videos to us. And we have Naveen. Yeah. Yes. I will do the honors. Thank you. You should have a group photo of the speakers. Inviting you all for a dinner, and also informing you all that tomorrow we have a very interesting session on Aadhaar and direct cash transfers, e-transactions, and ICT in health. So requesting you, and also like we have the award session tomorrow, and Honorable Minister Mr. Tope, who is the Minister of Higher Education, will be presenting the awards. So see you tomorrow. Thank you so much and good night.